Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. It's crazy that Heavy Hitters is already, the Heavy Hitters set reviews are already over. The set still has a while left. And this is the last one. Yes, we'll go over other decks as well. And technically Rhinar isn't a part of it, but he is in the set, so as like a main featured hero. So which is why we're doing him now, and why he's the first update. Not sure about the next few weeks. Maybe look at some ninjas, some other things. But Rhinar does need to be discussed. Rhinar, prior to Heavy Hitters, was in a spot where I didn't really feel like his game plan was too amazing. He didn't have the best tools at his disposal, and he had some good matchups. He was pretty good into the slower decks that really couldn't threaten him, since he could easily shred through your opponent's health, as he still does, and still be pretty defensive while doing it. But he didn't have the most, what should I say, consistent plan at it. But now, with Heavy Hitters, we get some new cards that really help Rhinar out, and that's what this deck list will showcase today. Of course, Rhinar, our hero here, the same old Rhinar with some pretty cool new art. That's not what we need to really talk about first, because in my Rhinar list, am playing Ballbreaker. Ballbreaker is a weapon that I don't think anyone thinks is bad. It's just, I think people aren't playing it, comparing it to the other option, which is a Mandible Claw, which this deck is also on one copy of Mandible Claw. But I mainly want to talk about the Ballbreaker inclusion over the second Mandible Claw. There are so many situations, and it's just the way that I play Rhinar, that your hands off a Blood Rush Bellow will never result in a double claw attack. It is so uncommon with the way that I play Rhinar that Ballbreaker sending in that one extra damage is huge. If there's ever a time where you can get the Ballbreaker bonus 1 damage and you can only do 1 attack, it's better to have Ballbreaker than Claw. And since you already have a Claw, there's situations where you might want to throw an attack instead of the second Claw will be the absolute same. Just Ballbreaker lets you have a little more flexibility, I'd say. I absolutely love this weapon in Rhinar. I think it's definitely a good choice to play it. Talking about the rest of the equipment, pretty basic stuff. Flesh Bag, it's the best Brute Helmet. Tunic, this is a slower deck. We'll definitely get to at least 6 turns. Scabbies, because they're 3 block on shoes. And the new Apex Bonebreakers, sort of same reason why in KO it's 3 health and sometimes extra damage. Moving on to the main board of the deck, we got a lot of the same familiar faces. Alpha Rampage, CNC, Swing Big, Red and Yellow, Smash Instinct, and Skullcrack. These cards were in my Brute list prior, my pre-Heavy Hitters Rhinar list for good reasons. Alpha Rampage is big damage plus intimidates. CNC and Swing Big are just the best attacks around. Smash Instincts are good 2-card hands, and Skullcrack is just extra resources whenever we Blood Rush Bellow it. But if you'll notice, there are some missing. Pack Hunt is no longer in the deck. That is because of Rhinar's new specialization, Show No Mercy. Show No Mercy is a 3 for 6 at red. It is 3 block. It's a Rhinar spec and says when this attacks a hero, you intimidate them. And if the defending hero has no cards in hand, this gets +3 power. That is an adaptive effect, meaning that if your opponent say you have 2 cards in hand, you intimidate 1 card out, they have 1 card left. If they decide to block with that card on the Show No Mercy, the Show No Mercy will get a +3 effect on it, making this hit for a lot of damage. If you ever rip away your opponent's whole hand with things like beatdowns or other intimidates, Rhinar's effect, you'll get the 9 damage for no additional cost either. A big downside of Alpha Rampage is the requirement of that additional cost. Sometimes it is helpful because it gives you that other intimidate you need to strip their hand fully, but I'd rather be playing a pump instead. So Show No Mercy is definitely a strong card that Rhinar should play. I think if you only wanted to play 2, that's fair. This needs to be paid with the blue, and isn't the best card by itself since you want to use it with its other effect. Pack Hunt can have some use, so you can definitely still play Pack Hunt as well. I just wouldn't leave the Show No Mercies at home. The last red in the deck is Barraging Beatdown Reds. 3 of it, big damage, intimidate. It's here because this is a slower list that wants to hit our opponent 2 or 3 times with bigger attacks to get them down real fast or chip them down and then use the reds and all the other beatdowns to push through that last bit of damage. Talking about yellows, I do play 1 yellow beatdown. A lot of my lists always have 1 fill card because you don't want 3 reckless swing really. So yellow beatdown's just a perfect intimidate +3, great card for that. Other yellows, we already talked about Smash Instincts. Blood Rush Bellow, best brute card in the game. I'm not going to talk about that one because it's not a new one. We already talked about in KO. We do need to talk about 2 new yellows though. Starting with the more basic one, Send Packing. Send Packing is really good. Think of this as extra CNCs that benefit off your Blood Rush. Of course, not exactly like it because they can still de-react from hand, but there are times where Send Packing just gets your opponent. You also get to see that card, so that means, yay, your opponent can't hide anything from you. Really good card, a brute staple going forward. Then the other yellow, Agile Windup. Only the yellow this time. This is a card that we saw in KO, but it's even better when your brute hero isn't restricted to only 1 arm. Meaning Rhinar and Leviah both get a huge boost from this card. I'm not much of a Leviah player. We probably won't do another Leviah video unless she gets some actual, like, she's in a set. But for Rhinar, Agile Windup gives you an Intimidate because it's a discard effect. And it gives you an Agility for the extra boost. And of course, if you've ever played against KO, you know that they will discard a Windup with the Mandible Claw to give it go again. But with the Ball Breaker, on a hand you want to set up, say your hand is Agile Windup blue and you have Tunic, you can Claw, discard the Windup, give it go again, then come in for 4 with the Ball Breaker and the Tunic resource, letting you have a 2-card 7. And you get an Agility token for next turn, which is a big plus, especially in a deck like Rhinar, who has the ability just to turn on a dime, go from super defensive to 1 turn you take everything, and you just slam your opponent. So Agile Windup, an extremely good card for that. This really lets you enable your weapons, sort of a perfect reason why you'd want Ball Breaker as well, is if you had more cards in hand, now you get to save an arsenal, or even just like pump 1, which honestly, like a blue beatdown on a Mandible Claw is deadly. Or even any beatdown on a Mandible Claw is deadly because they're just wasting an extra card to block the Claw. So really, really good use for Agile Windup. None of the other colors. The red isn't as strong as any of our other reds, and the blue is not a 6 because we are not KO. Finally, looking at the blues, some standard things: 3 Wrecker Romp, 3 High Roller, 2 Reckless Swing. High Roller can be replaced with Smashback Ailhorn if you want. I don't like the 2-block blue, which is why it's not in my deck. But it is a good card. But we need to talk about 2 other blue brute cards from heavy hitters. Bonebreaker Bellow. This is another card that gets a lot of really good use with Mandible Claw. The good thing about it is it's beat chest. In Rhinar, if you ever beat chest it, you get an Intimidate as well. Which is really strong. Beat chest is a mechanic that says as an additional cost, you may discard a card with 6 power. And then that means you've beaten chest this turn, which matters for a few other cards that aren't in the list, but it does matter for Bonebreaker Bellow. This card mainly will get never casted. I will say that it's here for the late game, which Rhinar games can actually go pretty late. Bonebreaker Bellow is a perfect late game card alongside Wrecker Romps. You'll generally be pitching them throughout the game, so you won't have very many 6s left. You will have the Wrecker Romps, but with a hand of full blues, you can Bonebreaker Bellow, discard one of your Wrecker Romps, and then come in with a Claw for 6 and a Ball Breaker for 4. Or if you had to block and your hand is one less card, you could even just Ball Breaker for 7, which is still pretty strong in those late game situations. So Bonebreaker Bellow doesn't have the most use early game, but it is still a blue block 3, which is perfect for what this deck wants to be doing. And it lets you have a very strong late game. The final card in the main board, Talk a Big Game. If you think we never played Bonebreaker Bellow, then we really never played Talk a Big Game. This card is in the deck to replace Clearing Bellow. Clearing Bellow was originally in my list, however Talk a Big Game kind of just replaced it. Clearing Bellow, if you don't know, is just a free 3-block blue Intimidate. Talk a Big Game does not intimidate, but it does give us the chance to threaten a bit more damage. In a perfect scenario where we are getting a full Intimidate off on our opponent, Talk a Big Game is an insane card that just lets us hit our opponent for that same amount of damage again. Say we have Talk a Big Game in Arsenal, so we can play it through everything. If we have a 4-card hand of a blue in Alpha Rampage, a red Barraging Beatdown, and a 6 to discard, we can Talk a Big Game, saying a number dependent on their armor, about 5 if they have a medium amount of armor. Play the Beatdown, play the Alpha Rampage, we've ripped 3 cards out of their hand, and now if they take at least 5, we get 5 mites, which means next turn, whatever we play is going to come in for 5 more, which is insanely strong. This can be an insanely good pump into a lot of situations. However, obviously, it's not good in every situation. Most of the time, this card will get blocked with or pitched. That's just how it will be. But for the situations that you do want it, it is a very good card. Rhinar has a lot of things like that, but I do really like Talk a Big Game. If you really don't want to play them, go ahead, play your Clearing Bellow, or, yeah, Smashback Ailhorn still fits the description. It's a very good card. Moving on to the sideboard. We are on an ad board of 9, meaning you will bring in at least 9 cards every game. Most of the time it will be 9 cards. We do have Remembrance, so if matchups you know he's going to try to fatigue you, which it is very hard to do into Rhinar, but it does happen. Bring in a few more, plus the Remembrance. It's kind of what the Reincarnates are for. Starting with our basic ad board, those are going to be the 3 Enlightened Strike, 3 Fate First Scene, and 3 Sink Below. That's what we're bringing in most of the time, simply just because Sink Below, Fate First Scene, good defensive options, great arsenals. Enlightened Strike lets us be a little more aggressive, have 1 more attack in our deck. Don't really got to talk about much more of them. Let's move on to the other different situational cards. I'm only on 1 pummel. 1 pummel can scare your opponent into thinking you have more pummels. The problem with pummels, we are not on Romping Club, so we can't pummel the club in those types of situations. We can only pummel our attacks. Of course, you'd rather be pummeling your attacks, but in the matchups you'd want this. They're going to be the slower matchups. They're going to try to block you more. You can use this to push over damage and then just really disrupt them. Aggro decks you kind of are on a different plane anyway. Pummel can be useful into them sometimes, but making them discard one card might help you a little bit, but you probably took more than 4 damage just to not get, just to try to get the pummel off anyway. So, not really too strong to aggro. 3 sigils for those later game situations, as well as these are good into Wizard and Runeblade. Runeblade, you could argue not wanting these. I tend to not bring them in because they only do really 1 AB, just no rune gloves might be enough for that game. But you can definitely bring them in if you want. In later games, Sigil's very good. Since games that go late, this can just be 3 HP on an off turn, just fine. And they're obviously good into Wizard because we can't play our normal D-Reacts. 2 Oasis. People will say this card is bad, but I really like this card. If you don't like it, you don't have to play it. I just really like it. It's good into Wizard if you're not getting pitch stacked, but it's very hard for Kano to pitch stack Rhinar because Rhinar can just kill them, and Rhinar makes them go early. And if you make them go early, then you have enough to pitch and you have enough to pay for Oasis, and you also are on Tunic. So Oasis really good in Rhinar for those Wizard matchups, and Wizard is very good right now. We're going to skip Arc Smash for now. 3 Reincarnate. This is here for Dromai because this card's very good into Dromai. You really don't want to be discarding, and also Prism. You don't want to be discarding your 6s. So when you have to, this is the thing you'd hopefully want to discard because it goes back into your deck. It's just a bit of extra deck space. Also into fatigue matchups, this can come up, getting you a card back in your deck. That's really why it's here. Reincarnate. It's just pretty nice. 1 Remembrance, again, for those fatigue. I have a lot of stuff teched into fatigue. Also, I know I'm saying when you are playing into fatigue, but you can also just be the fatigue deck. If you're playing into Mechanologist, not Max, because Mechanoid is scary, but if you're like playing into Dash or Dio, you just like put your whole sideboard in, and you play 74 cards. Is it 74 cards? 74 cards. And you just sit there. No way it's 74 cards. Did I fuck up? No, I'm 80. I must be doing my math wrong. Because I have 9 equipment. What? Oh, that's including the equipment. You shuffle in 70. You shuffle in 71 cards, and you just sit there and you fatigue them. Because what are they going to do? If they're control dash, they die because you're a Rhinar. If they're aggro dash, they die because you have 71 cards in your deck on all your defensive options. How are they going to kill you? So you could just be the fatigue deck. That's also why these tools are good. Reincarnate's good in fatigue. Remembrance, good in fatigue. Sigils, really good if you're playing that fatigue strategy. So you could just like be the fatigue deck too. That's another thing. I normally don't because fatigue is unfun. But if you're trying to win a big event, hell, if I was trying to win a big event and I know I can fatigue my opponent, I'm doing it. Because Rhinar, really good at fatigue, has a massively good fridge with Bone Breakers, Scabs, Fleshbag. All that threatens really good damage. Makes opponents block. That's a big thing. It's great. Finally, 1 Arc Smash. I don't think you need more than 1, especially because we're on a Remembrance, so we can shuffle it back in. But, I mean, you need it for mech. That's about it. You can destroy Mechanoid. I'm pretty sure it's an item. I think. If it's not, well, you can destroy their hyperdrivers. Into Dash, it's very good. Into Dio, it's very good. Into Teklo, it's kind of mid. But, hell, it's Teklo. You shred him. Kind of. Barraging Beatdown's really bad in Attack Low. No, not equipment cards. Barraging Beatdown's great in Attack Low. Because that's less cards that they can use to block your barragings. So great. Your matchup in Attack Low is already insane. This is just for other mechs. In the past, Rhinar was pretty bad into Control Dash, but now Rhinar has a lot of tools to just throw her out of the water. And same thing with Aggro Dash. Like, Aggro Dash could just kill you before, but like, now you can just fatigue Aggro Dash. So, and this card is kind of instrumental in that to get rid of Chamber, so they can't just double gun you every turn. And try to play a bit longer of a game. So, really, one Arc Smash is all you need. I forgot to talk about the rest of the equipment. I'm sorry, I know I normally do that, so let's talk about it now. Gambler's Gloves for Illusionists. You need less armor into Illusionists because those matchups are about board control. If you can control the board, you're going to win the game. You can control the board by rolling scabs more, especially in a Prism. You need Gambler's Gloves for rolling scabs, so you play Gambler's Gloves. No-Run Gloves whenever we need at least 1 AB, and Skullhorn into Wizard because you're not blocking with your helmet anyway, and you want 3 AB. That's pretty much it. It's going to be the end of the video. I think that was a bit of a fast one, mainly because I've done a lot of Rhinar videos before. I'm not explaining anything new. The deck is very basic. Rhinar's very easy to learn. I would probably say KO should be your starting point if you're a Brute, because I think KO is the best Brute, and Levi is a little complex, but Rhinar is also just a good starting point if you just didn't want to play KO, and they are in the same set, so I can see reasons for that. I think Rhinar is definitely a good hero in this meta. It's just people aren't going to be playing it because if people think of Brute, they're either going to play KO or they already like Lelia and are going to play Lelia. I don't think anyone's jumping in saying, I'm going to play Rhinar this format because this, and this. No, they're not going to say that. They're going to play Leviah or KO. I personally will play Rhinar because KO hates me as a deck. I don't understand why. It just does. So, that's about it. Next week, we probably are going to look at something Ninja. Probably my Katsu list first, if I do even do Fi at all. I don't know. And then, yeah. Maybe by that point we have the CC deck, at least something about it. I probably won't talk about it until we have the full deck list. But whenever we get that, I'll definitely do a review on it like I did for Around the Table. So with all that, that's going to be the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.